Hi, folks. Welcome back. So it looks like Democrats were sipping Cabernet in Napa while Los Angeles was going up in flames 2 weeks ago, like some kind of sacrificial offering to the gods of progressive chaos. And no, that's not satire. That's just California politics. We've reached a point in America where enforcing the law is controversial, ICE raids are considered war crimes, and calling someone by the wrong Hispanic name is apparently more offensive than burning down a police precinct. The left is having a full-blown identity crisis. 1 minute, they're defending illegal aliens. The next, they're offended when you mix up Jose and Alex, as if their entire moral platform isn't already built on confusion. In today's clips, we'll dive into this carnival of contradictions. National Guard troops sent to do nothing, J.D. Vance refusing to babysit blue state tantrums, and Gavin Newsom trading law enforcement for wine flights. It's a political Cirque du Soleil, and the clowns are running the vineyard. That being the Democrat clowns. Thank God we got J.D. Vance in town because he's finally setting them straight. And let's see how that's happening. Starting with our great, and I say that very sarcastically, Mayor Karen Bass. What is she saying?
Can I tell you something, though, that we need to think about?
No.
We need to think about the National Guard that is federalized. We need to think about the Marines. You know, those are young women and men who are on this deployment.
You don't care, lady.
Their homes, their families, their education.
You don't care.
And to me, it's like using them as props. Take them away from their school, take them away from their employment to do this deployment that is not needed is not only cruel, but it's impacting their families too. I think on Father's Day, the children that were waiting for their fathers to come home, that they have missing fathers because they were detained.
Oh my God.
The people who were here legally that showed up for their immigration appointment that's required every year.
Why don't you do your job then?
Detained. This chaos needs to stop, and it can only stop
with you.
I
like Mayor Karen Bass has truly mastered the art of being the most Machiavellian, soft-spoken ghoul in American politics, smiling sweetly while deploying rhetoric so manipulative it could make Pelosi blush mid-soul extraction. This monologue painting ICE enforcement and National Guard deployments by the president as an act of cruelty toward the families of the Guard is a prime example of emotional weaponization masquerading as leadership. Let's be clear for a second. The National Guard exists to maintain order when local officials like her fail to do their jobs. Like when Bass stood by as Los Angeles descended into riots, looting, and collectivized obstruction of federal law. Her crocodile tears now over young men and women pulled from school would be more convincing if she hadn't spent the last 2 weeks defending policies that turn the entire city into a sanctuary chaos. What we're seeing isn't actual concern, it's just straight up projection. The left gutted law enforcement, undermined the immigration laws, and now whines when federal leadership steps in to restore law and order the left intentionally destroyed. This isn't about compassion. It's purely about control. Bass is using children, families, and uniformed service members as rhetorical shields, not out of concern for the service members, but because she knows the optics sell better than the truth. And the truth is, Democrats created this mess. They've sponsored this mess. And they've been pushing for this mess to get worse, going on TV and literally calling people out to the streets. And now, all of a sudden, they want to pretend to be the victims of this and to share any shred of empathy with the folks who are out there keeping our streets safe here in Los Angeles. What a shameless hag. And on that note, Vice President J.D. Vance stopped by Los Angeles yesterday, and he actually touched upon a lot of the points that I just made, basically saying that, hey, if you actually ensure the safety of your citizens, the federal government doesn't have to step in and do your job. Anyway, Democrats obviously completely ignored that. Instead, they focused on this one literal 10-second moment from this press conference.
Democrat lawmakers who keep getting handcuffed. The New York Times just did a story. They keep getting handcuffed, suggesting that the Trump administration is cracking down on Democrats. Can you comment on that?
Well, I was hoping Jose Padilla would be here to ask a question, but unfortunately, I guess he decided not to show up because there wasn't the theater. And that's all it is. You know, I think everybody realizes that's what this is.
Yeah.
It's pure political theater.
Yep.
These guys show up. They want to be captured on camera doing something. They want to be able to go back to their far left groups and to say, look, me, I stood up against border enforcement. I stood up against Donald Trump, when all they're really standing up for is for drug cartels to run rampant over our country and sex traffickers to be able to continue to traffic little kids into our country. That's what you're doing when you stand against border enforcement. So I think these guys, we ought to laugh them out of the building. We ought to call them out for doing what they're doing, which is grandstanding. And if they want to work seriously on border enforcement and on keeping their communities safe, the Trump administration's door is wide open. But they're not doing that. They'd love the grandstanding. They hate law enforcement because they hate the idea of the United States of America having a border. It's a disgrace, but it is what it is.
Nailed it. J.D. Vance didn't just fumble Padilla's name. It was intentional. And as a result, he exposed the left's entire performance art. The left predictably clutches their pearls over everything, and now they're doing it over Jose Padilla. But the real scandal isn't the name slip. It's that Vance torched the entire charade in just one sentence. Their reaction exposed them. Alex Padilla and his allies have turned immigration enforcement into a stage play, complete with fake arrests and rehearsed outrage for the cameras. This is what happens when identity politics fuses with activist media. Every press conference becomes an audition, every policy disagreement a moral crisis, and every border agent cast as the villain. What Vance is pointing out through sarcasm, not malice, by the way, is that these people, these Democrats, aren't interested in solutions. They're addicted to the optics. The cultural machine that elevated figures like Padilla thrives on spectacle because it can't defend leftist policies like enabling open borders that empower cartels and human traffickers. In a sane world, leaders would protect their citizens first. In this one, that's run culturally, academically, mostly everywhere by the left, they chase retweets from activist journalists. That's not democracy. It's just a pantomime one. And like clockwork, our dear California Democrats all got in line to clout farm these comments by J.D. Vance, starting with the biggest clout demon of all, our mayor here in Los Angeles, Karen Bass.
Mr. Vice President, how dare you disrespect our senator? You don't know his name, but yet you served with him before you were vice president, and you continue to serve with him today, because the last time I checked, the Vice President of the United States is the President of the U.S. Senate. You serve with him today, and how dare you disrespect him and call him Jose. But I guess he just looked like anybody to you. Well, he's not just anybody to us. He is our senator.
I don't think I've seen acting that bad since I sat through an off-Broadway adaptation of The Glass Menagerie performed by Muppets. Karen Bass's meltdown over J.D. Vance calling Senator Padilla Jose isn't about names. It's about narrative control. She's not actually outraged because Vance forgot one of her colleagues' first name. She's outraged because he punctured the sanctimony that props up their entire moral theater. In a city burning from her policy failure, collapsing under illegal immigration, over 1 million illegal aliens in this city alone, about 10% of all of America here in LA. And that doesn't even get into the fentanyl overdoses. That doesn't even get into the homelessness. Instead of solving all of that, her priority is to deliver a monologue about racial optics like she's auditioning for the DNC remake of The West Wing. This is what happens when identity becomes the only political currency in your movement, where substance takes a backseat to symbolism and victimhood is leveraged to distract from total institutional decay. Bass doesn't want a conversation about border enforcement or crime. She wants the political theater. She wants to be able to play out her Marxist fantasy, her grievance. She wants to be mad. She wants the applause for being offended. That's the script. And if you dare go off book, even by accident, the performance becomes a tantrum. And it wouldn't be a Democrat retarded take of the day without the presence of Gavin Newsom, our great governor, who had this to say to the vice president as soon as he heard that the vice president was coming to town.
Mr. Vice President, we read that you're coming into California, which is important. It's been months now since some of the most devastating wildfires in U.S. history occurred. Tens of thousands of lives completely torn asunder. I hope you have an opportunity to spend some quality time with some of the victims, the families, the Palisades, and also spend some time in Altadena which is incredibly important. It's also
what have you done?
As well, and I honestly mean this, that you sit down with the President of the United States, who just a couple days ago suggested that these American citizens may not get the support that other citizens get all across this country in terms of disaster relief. I hope we get that back on track. We're counting on you, Mr. Vice President.
Gavin Newsom is turning more each day into a pile of burning sticks than anyone could have ever predicted. An unconvincing mix of sanctimony, passive aggression, and the smell of Chardonnay wafting over scorched earth. His performative plea to J.D. Vance, cloaked in disaster relief concern, is exactly what we've come to expect from a politician who governs like an Instagram therapist, but fundraises like a French laundry maitre d'. Let's be real for a second, folks. Newsom isn't worried about wildfire victims. He's worried about federal oversight that might expose just how much state-level mismanagement, environmental extremism, and bureaucratic bloat have compounded California's crisis. The many crises we have going on in the state. The energy crisis, the wildfire crisis, the riot crisis, the immigration crisis. And his jab about the president questioning aid, that's just straight up projection, not principle. This is the same man who prioritized Napa Valley fundraisers while LA burned, and who treats real suffering as a photo op waiting to be exploited. What this moment reveals is that the modern left no longer governs, they curate. They perform empathy while outsourcing accountability, and the moment anyone from outside their echo chamber shows up with a clipboard and a backbone, they clutch their pearls and pivot to moral theater. Now, I know you might be thinking, why are you talking about wine, Dennis? Newsom was caught at a party at the French Laundry during COVID. That was nearly 4 years ago. Why bring it up again? Well, I am so glad you asked, because our great governor here in California, Gavin Newsom, was just exposed again for doing the same thing. This time, he's sipping contemporary yet sophisticated wines at a Napa Valley fundraiser while Los Angeles descended into riots. While cars burned outside City Hall, Newsom was out partying and cozying it up with donors. On June 7th, as rioters torched public buildings, hurled concrete at law enforcement, and turned the city into a war zone over federal immigration enforcement, Newsom was at his co-founded winery enjoying smash burgers, live jazz, and what the invite proudly called the perfect kickoff to summer fun. He stayed for at least 90 minutes, then retreated into the estate while chaos raged 400 miles away here in Los Angeles. And when called out, his office spun it as a heartfelt cancer fundraiser. But let's be honest, this wasn't about charity. It was about insulation. Newsom governs like a man who knows nothing can touch him because he's a Democrat. So this isn't even about leadership. It's about luxury cosplay. He doesn't fear the consequences of abandonment because his class never has to face them. He has media cover, he has institutional cover, he has academic cover, he has political cover from every side, he has billionaire cover, he has Google cover, except in those inconvenient moments where articles like this end up getting published on publications like the City Journal and exposing Newsom for the fraud that he is. He doesn't care about Californians. He doesn't care about the state. He doesn't care about immigration. He only cares about himself, his bottom line, and being elected president. California can burn as far as Newsom cares. Law enforcement can bleed as far as our governor cares. And the streets can fall into utter decay. But Newsom's glass is always not even half full, not even half empty. Overflowing. So the question isn't even how much rot can our leaders in California, who have had one-party Democrat rule for decades, can get away with. It's why we keep letting them get away with it. At what point do we stop mistaking performance for principle, privilege for competence, and voting these fools in? When did we become a state where power means never having to show up, never having to take responsibility, never having to live with the consequences of your own policies? These people build nothing. They fix nothing. They protect no one. They don't care about you. They, in fact, hate you. They despise you. And yet they remain untouchable, protected by a media machine that sells their decadence as virtue. If that doesn't bother you, it should. Because sooner or later, the cost of their comfort, of that Democrat Party, while our city burns, they come at the cost of your peace of mind. You tell me what you think in the comments down below. Hope you have a terrific day. Peace.